During Johnson's administration, the Vietnam War raised the U.S. national debt to $354 billion. Under Nixon, before the war ended, the government incurred an additional $121 billion in debt, bringing the total to $475 billion, a record that led to inflation. This terrified Nixon, but thanks to this, Nixon came up with an invention that would make the whole world operate according to it until this day. Simply put, the nature of the bill in your hand is a piece of paper that gives you the right to claim something. And before the end of World War II in 1944, the famous Bretton Woods Conference was born and declared that the dollar would be the world's common reserve currency, and holding this dollar gave you the right to claim gold at any time. The reason for choosing gold as collateral is properly understood by everyone. But the question is, why the whole world at that time? Simply because at that time, America was too rich, specializing in selling weapons to other countries to fight. So America held up to 2/3 of the world's gold. Because they had so much gold, all other countries had to dance to America's tune, using the US dollar as the common currency. Back then, it took $44 to exchange for one gold bar. However, only dollar holders could exchange it like that. Holding other currencies couldn't be exchanged for gold. For this reason, America was truly the father of all nations. With power in hand, America printed money freely without any gold reserve ratio established, spending all day eating and putting money into manufacturing weapons to fight in Korea and Vietnam. This caused the US dollar to increasingly lose value. So why did America having less money cause the US dollar to lose value? Simply put, the more abundant something is, the less valuable it becomes. In the past, one bill could buy one watch, but now it takes 81 bills to exchange for one watch. Because of this, the countries around the world were terrified of holding dollars, because the more money America printed, the more their dollar reserves became like waste paper. And countries had to clamor to return their reserve dollars to America to exchange for gold, because countries like France and Spain were frantically bringing money to exchange for gold, even bringing military escorts to transport the gold back. America understood that they would die either way, as there wasn't enough gold left in storage to exchange. For this reason, on August 15, 1971, US President Nixon announced the closure of the gold window. Now holding dollars wouldn't get you gold, but only oil. This was a dirty move, but it was extremely correct and wise of America. America understood that unlike gold, oil is used for production and consumption. Without it, industry and machinery manufacturing couldn't function. Therefore, oil and its products are present in virtually all aspects of modern human life and activities. Thus, whoever controls the oil supply controls the global economy. The question is, how to get oil? At that time, America was targeting Arabia, a country with the world's largest reserves and extraction volume, to sign an agreement. America would protect Arabia from Israeli invasion. Arabia's job was to sell oil to other countries in US dollars, not in any other currency. This agreement was immediately accepted, and the dollar, which was on its way to becoming worthless paper, suddenly became something more precious than gold. Simply because in this whole world, every country needs oil. Look around you, there's always something that needs oil to be produced. To get oil, you need dollars. To get dollars, you have to be friendly with America by exporting goods to America to get dollars. And to export to America, you have to sell at low prices so that they'll buy. If you sell too high and they don't buy, you're dead in the water. Selling to America at low prices, American people are the biggest beneficiaries. Because of Nixon's decision to abolish the gold standard, the whole world has to play by American rules. Any attempt to request oil purchases in any other currency is immediately terminated, simply because now America wants the whole world to dance with the old petrodollar. In 2000, Iraqi President Saddam Hussein announced he would abolish the petrodollar system and instead use the euro to sell oil to the global market. In February 2003, The Guardian UK noted that Iraq had profited after implementing this policy change. But shortly after, with the reason that Iraq still possessed and was developing weapons of mass destruction linked to the Al-Qaeda terrorist organization, America launched an invasion on Iraq. Immediately, Iraq abandoned the petro-euro system to return to the old petrodollar regime. In Libya, leader Gaddafi was punished for a similar proposal. Gaddafi had plans to create a unified currency for the Black continent to buy and sell oil from the African region. But America and NATO allies didn't like this. According to Hillary Clinton's later leaked emails, this was because the main reason Gaddafi was overthrown. There were wars with deep roots in Nixon's era, one of the world's best influencing Trump and Biden's election a few days ago. Donald Trump always wanted America to prosper again. Basically, he wanted the US dollar to impact the world as before, not wanting to sit idle watching Russia and China sell oil to each other and settle in their own currency. It will be a long time before we return to Nixon, an extremely intelligent, diabolical man, but Nixon still had to fail before Vietnam in 1972. To make it easier for B-52s to bomb Hanoi, Nixon visited China and the Soviet Union to get these two countries to stop supporting Vietnam, making it easier for America to attack Vietnam. This made it extremely difficult for Vietnam to fight America. With the Soviet Union, China's aid had made it hard to fight. Now without their aid to help us manage on our own, it became much more difficult. That was one reason why America was extremely confident, along with the story of our troops in Haiphong on April 16, 1972. They fired nearly 100 rockets without dropping a single B-52 in Hanoi that day. 40 shots were fired, but nothing fell. This was an attack where America's purpose was to mark warehouses and power plants in Haiphong and Hanoi to prevent our supporting troops from advancing to the battlefield in the south. America also wanted to test their new jamming technology to see how it would load ammunition and whether it could overcome Vietnam's missiles. Too confident in victory, America hastily organized an invasion drill into Hanoi in late December 1972. Realizing our anti-enemy capability was too weak, our forces quickly rectified everything so that if America returned to bomb again, we would have a response. But how to study was only known then. Now comes the important part. Of course, there was no Google back then, but such secret military documents couldn't be found. The final solution only came from questioning pilots in Hua Lo prison. That day, we took the pilots to visit places devastated by the B-52 bombs. They gained their understanding of a meaningless war, wrote letters and drew their life stories in Hua Lo prison to send home. To their families, they were treated like kings. They loved life more than ever, so they knew exactly what could be done, how we could fight against B-52s and protect their lives. Thanks to information from Hua Lo prisoners, combined with our military's creative exploration, we finally discovered that B-52s hadn't jammed the 3 cm wavelength band. This was a decisive discovery for the comeback. The 3 cm wavelength band was based in the radar stations captured K-860 targets, typically used for 57mm high artillery supported by China. This was a magical wavelength because it could distinguish B-52s from fighter planes without the ambiguity of other radars. Distinguishing B-52s was one thing, But even better was that it wasn't attacked by strike missiles because missiles didn't target the 3 centimeter wavelength. A very crude but brilliant solution that American pilots couldn't explain how they could be shot down. So the question is, did America know we were using 3 centimeter waves to attack them back then? The answer is they knew B-52s and ALR-18 jamming devices to interfere with this wavelength, but it was only attached to the tail to avoid MiG-21 aircraft, while for America it was 3 centimeters from the ground. That didn't cause any damage, so they didn't need to install jamming devices. This is unbelievable, because such a mistake could happen with America's developed defense industry, but they allowed Vietnam to use this very crude tool against them. That's why after the end of the 12-day campaign, Major General Pham Thu had to personally go to Hong prisons to interrogate prisoners. He asked the B-52 electronics officer, when the plane entered Hanoi, did the ground radar operate in the 3 centimeter wavelength? The pilot immediately replied, yes. How do you handle it? I didn't care because it was well added to anti-aircraft radar that couldn't threaten B-52. The above answer showed us how American contempt its subjectivity made them too severely. But that's the truth. It was just a struggle of soldiers on the ground. As for the soldiers in the air, this seemed no less significant. According to Lieutenant General Phat Duong, our Army strategy for pilots was extremely correct. We understood that Americans only wanted to attack at night because daytime attacks were too convenient for MiG-21 bombers. America also knew that there were very few pilots who could fly at night in Vietnam. That's why it is also allowed night attacks. Knowing America's intention, from 1967, Lieutenant General Phat Duong had just graduated from flight school in the Soviet Union and hadn't had time to do anything yet. We received news that Vietnam requested the Soviet Union to let our pilots fly at night. This also extremely surprised the Soviet Union, because this order had never existed before. Pilots who had just graduated during the day weren't ready to fly, but were required to fly at night in complex snowy conditions. Back then, pilots like Lieutenant General Phat Duong practiced very diligently because night flying was completely different from day flying. Especially takeoff and landing were simple because whenever Americans saw an airport, they would attack it as the first target when striking the north. The reason was because they were very afraid of their fighter planes. Therefore, pilots like Lieutenant General Phat Duong had to practice very well in takeoff and landing skills on narrow runways, combined with having other aircraft pretend to control B-52s flying. During night training for detection and reflexes, studying the B-52 formula was crucial for pilots like Lieutenant General Phat Duong. When they saw their comrades shoot down American aircraft, they wanted permission from commanders to engage and achieve glory for the country. However, their commanders strictly followed the established strategy, saying, "Your task is to train for night combat. Daytime engagement is not an option. You must train thoroughly before entering battle. I fear we cannot complete the mission otherwise." Thanks to such clear strategies, our pilots struck fear into American forces. Even when forced to fly at night, our pilots managed to deceive American forces about their approach paths to B-52s, as in the case of pilot Hu Sun-kil. This spirit made American pilots deeply fearful of Vietnam. While taking down B-52s was standard procedure, when there were too many B-52s and limited pilots, destruction wasn't always possible. Protecting key targets became the priority. Pilots' mission was to engage B-52s and force them to disperse away from important locations like command centers and power plants. With strong fighting spirit and coordination, after 12 days and nights, the US lost 34 out of 193 units in Vietnam. These heavy losses forced the US to negotiate in Paris on January 27. 1973. After the bombing campaign, captured American pilots were taken to bombed areas like Khâm Thiên Street, Bạch Đằng Road, and Mai Hospital to witness the devastating impact on Hanoi civilians. William Conley, a B-52 electronic warfare lieutenant colonel, admitted, "We saw a long row of townhouses, a large hospital. We were very surprised and ashamed. Our superiors had deceived us. It was alive. They said these were military targets, but they were actually densely populated civilian areas. The bombing marks were clearly marked. There could be no mistake." The air battle of Điện Biên Phủ was one of the bloodiest battles for Hanoi's military and civilians. It showed the world that while others might be challenged, Vietnam could not be defeated, regardless of the technology used.